Hello, welcome back to Sharks Happen. My name is Hal. I'm your host, going over shark attacks from the 1900s till present, mostly large sharks, and we're going to get started over in Kauai, Hawaii at Brenneke Beach. The date is October 28th, 1997. Mike Coots, he is 19 years old, and he's out to do some morning bodyboarding. About 7:20 in the morning, he's a good 300 to 400 feet off of shore. He's sitting in a swell, he says, and he says that he can see a stream of dead fish floating in on this stream of water. And suddenly he's bit by a shark. 7:20 in the morning, he's bit in both legs. His right leg is severed at the mid-calf, so it bites his right leg off, damages his other lower leg, and then he's able to get in and get help. He spends a week in the hospital. After a week in the hospital, 3 weeks later, he is in surfing again. He's in the water again 3 weeks after he had been attacked. Mike actually became an advocate for sharks and for the ocean. He, in 2010, I believe it was, he went ahead and took up the cause of banning of shark finning, having them in your possession or doing finning at all. And then after that, he became a photographer that does some marine photography. I do believe it is. But yeah, he was attacked, and he said it felt like he was in a feeding frenzy. The shark was 4 to 4.5 meters long, so you're talking 13, 14-foot tiger shark. Ended up taking his leg, mid-calf on the right leg, and then bit him in the left leg. We're going to put it down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. Now we head over to California off Cove State Beach / Gray Whale Beach. The date is June 26, 2021. Namanja Spasojevic is 38 years old, and he is going out to do some crabbing. He leaves the beach on the north end of the beach at about 8:30 in the morning and starts swimming out, collecting crab as he's going. He's, I guess, swimming along a rocky cliff type area where rocks and cliffs are off the right side of the north end of the beach that jut out. So he's swimming along that, and shortly around 9 o'clock he gets out and turns around and he starts heading back. He says he comes across 5 crab that were down there, so he dives down to check out the crabs, and he's looking at them, and he was about to keep one of them, but he said no, he wanted to wait and see if he could get a larger one. So it sounds like he was near his limit at the time. And he swims himself back to the surface, and as he gets to the surface, he feels a pain in his right leg, and he looks to see the face of a shark. And he says he turned with his back to the rocks and started kicking to get himself away as fast as he could. In case the shark would come back, he would be able to see it. So he kept on his back, kicking his way into shore now. And he got himself into the shallows where the rocks, the water smashing into the rocks, it's white water type thing. And he stands up and he walks into shore, takes off his piece of his equipment and makes a tourniquet out of it for his leg, and then starts walking to go get help. And he makes it up to some stairs by the beach, it sounds like, and he was going to go up there, and he saw a fisherman. He yelled help for the fisherman, and then he laid down on the beach with his leg elevated so that he would keep the blood from going out. He says that he knew the tourniquet wasn't perfect, but it probably helped the situation. That fisherman notified and got him help, and they got him in. He ended up with I believe it was 10 lacerations to the back of his thigh, and he got himself sewn up, and he recovered fully from that I know of. It's an attack by a 6 to 8 foot great white shark, so a very small great white saw him over there, and it's probably its feeding area, an area that hangs out looking for fish, and decided to take a bite, but it was a quick bite and release. Wasn't any kind of a attempt to eat him, so we're going to put it down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. And now we're going to head over to Tonga, to Tuanuku. The date is February 1st, 2006. Tessa Horan is 24 years old, and her and some friends were just playing some soccer, some games on the beach. One's called netball, the other is soccer. It might be the same thing, but they get done, and it's about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 at night, and probably before dusk, though, and the 3 of them, two boys and her, go out and they swim out in the water to cool off. They swim into the deeper waters to get into the cooler water, and then they stop to rest, and all of a sudden Tessa is grabbed and pulled under, they assume by a shark, and then she pops right back up to the surface of the water. Now, the younger boy that was closest to her knew that she had been attacked by a shark, but he swam over to her immediately anyway and got to her and noticed that her leg had been removed, had been severed at the thigh, and he helped her get to shore while the other boy swam ahead and got the villagers to get her some help, but she had bled out. She was pretty much dead by the time she had reached shore, losing her leg like that. Amazing for the kid to swim over to her like that when he knows that probably a large shark had gotten a hold of her and taken her under. And that's going to be an attack, not an attempt to predate. Okay, now we're going to head back to Hawaii, to Oahu, to the North Shore. The date, May 31st, 2006. Ronald Deguilmo, he and two friends are out doing some spearfishing. It's about 1:30 in the afternoon. Ronald is about 20 yards away from his two friends, and suddenly he is fighting off a tiger shark. He's in a fight with it. It sounds like he's trying to keep it from biting him, and it finally gets a hold of his right arm, I believe it is, and he hits it with the butt of his spear gun, and it releases him. He yells to his friends he's been bitten. They start swimming over to him. They're 20 yards away. They were kind of thinking he was joking until he raised his arm out of the water, and they could see that he was attacked. They get to him. One of the friends takes and makes a tourniquet on his arm and then starts to swim him into shore, while the other one, they take turns helping him swim in while the other one stays back a few paces, looking out with their spear gun in case the shark returns, which it never did. They get him to shore and get him in to get help. The wound to his arm turned out to be to his forearm, a 4 or 5 inch long gash, 2 inches wide, 2 inches deep. And he went through the surgeries to get that thing sewn up. It was 6.5 hours of surgeries he went through, and they still didn't know if they were going to need to do more surgeries to close the rest of the wound. And he may only get 90% of his hand usage back after it tore into, his nerves and things. So yeah, you don't always recover even from just a single bite and release. You end up with, nerve damage, and it could cause permanent damage. So that's what it sounds like it did to him. That's our story of Ronald Deguilmo, an attack, not an attempt to predate. Okay, we're going to finish out our unprovoked attacks over off the coast of South Africa, off Noordhoek, at a spot known as the Dunes. The date is September 12th, 2003. David Bornman is 19 years old, and he and 5 friends are out doing some boogie boarding in the early afternoon. It's about 2:30, and David is in the water about 100 feet from shore. He's got 2 friends, Peter Whale and Brent Mills, are both out about 160 feet from shore. So he's at 100 feet. They're about 60 feet further out than he is, and it's 2:30 in the afternoon. Peter Whale says he heard splashing, which didn't make sense because there's no waves. So he looks over and he says he saw his friend in the mouth of this shark. And he said the shark was the biggest thing he's ever seen it. The thing had his friend in his mouth, and all of a sudden it took him and submerged with him. Seconds later, he saw the shark pop up and toss his friend out of his mouth. So it tossed David out of his mouth, and the shark obviously went about on its way. Peter Whale, having seen the shark, yelled to everybody else there was a shark, and he started paddling in, and everybody that was in the water was paddling in also. Brent Mills was paddling in, and he noticed that a wave had came along to help some of them get in there. Brent wasn't able to catch that wave, but he saw up ahead of him that David was actually in that wave trying to body surf his way in. His boogie board got totally torn to pieces in that first hit. It just exploded his board into just little chunks. So he's just him trying to get in now. He has no board. So Brent paddles his way over to him, and he gets there, and he says that David looks at him and says, "I can't breathe. I'm having trouble breathing." And he looked at him and says, "Well, it didn't take your legs. You still have both your legs." Didn't tell him, that he was thinking that this is a major attack, a major bite. So he helps David get to shore. But by the time David gets to shore, Peter Whale is a certified rescue diver, and he was doing CPR on him for a half hour trying to get him back. There was nothing you could do for him. He had bled out all that blood that was in that wave. I mean, there's just no way. The bite is just a crazy one bite deal. But I'm going to post a link. We've seen this attack, actually. We've seen this photo earlier in the show, way back. I had posted a link of this photo and said that I wasn't sure that it was real, that it could be like a prop for for a movie or something, but it was done really well. Oh, that's why it was done really well. That was David Bornman. I wasn't aware of his attack, his info at all. You don't hear about a shark throwing somebody after it gets them to the top of the water. We've gone over to the one where the shark ended up hitting the guy when he was at the back of the boat, and the force of the hit flipped him in the air all the way to the front of the boat, about 10, 12 feet in the air from one side of the boat to the other. But we haven't had a shark have him in the mouth, lift him up, and toss him. The only thing I can think of that's close to that, I think his name is Omar Conger. I remember his name, his friend's name, Rem, is the last name, but the shark chewed him up and then just spit him out by his buddy, but didn't toss him like this shark did. So I'm going to post this picture again of the link to the picture of this attack. We never went over this attack. We just were talking about whether it was real or not, the photo itself. You can see the one bite mark, the one photo that they have really well, but it's got a second photo in there that'll kind of give you the idea. Like there's the Louis Boren got his, chunked off with the board. They had another attack we covered where the guy was bit in the back, and I think the only thing that stopped him from having that same thing where it just ripped everything out was the board. Well, this is the kind of a bite that I assume when I hear about those kind of attacks. Usually raking involved, they can get up underneath bones and ribs and just pull that up. But you can take a look at the second photo is kind of like seeing what it does before it raked. So at least that's what I'm thinking, but you can check these out. We've looked at them before. We'll go ahead and finish out the show. I just wanted to go over this one because I finally found the story that goes along with the photos, and the story is just as crazy as the photos. So we'll finish this off real quick. We're going to put that down as an attack, not an attempt to predict. Okay, now we're going to finish out our show with What Were You Thinking? Back in 1957, it's at Salter Path, which is North Carolina. Rupert Wade, 57 years old, he was out swimming. He was swimming so far offshore that Bill Shaw, the lifeguard on duty, swam out to go warn him, and then he saw that it was Wade, and he turned around and came back. This guy, I guess, is a popular swimmer. He swims all the time, swims out in the deeper waters, does this. I mean, he must for you to just swim back. But around noon, he ends up being attacked by a shark, and people see that he is struggling. Bill Wade swims out to him, but he pushes him away and tells him to go get help. Bill Wade goes back. Finally, Sergeant and a couple other officers swam out to him, got him back to the dock. They were trying CPR the whole way back to this dock, to no avail. He got bit above and below the left knee, I believe it is, and he ended up bleeding out before he even got himself to shore. He was laying face down in the water when they went out to get him the second time. I'm just wondering if he would have been all right if he had allowed that guy to get by him and help him the first time. Now, maybe the shark still had him at the time. Not the first time we've had this where people are telling others to get away while they're being attacked. But both times that I know that I remember, this story and the other one that I remember offhand, both of them ended up in fatalities. So, that's our story of Rupert Wade. But what do you think? And he was 600 yards offshore. That's quite a ways. There's a cutoff. I believe it's 200 yards or 200 feet. One or the other. It's 200 feet or 200 yards where half of the attacks in the water happen outside of it and half of them happen inside of it. There's a cutoff like that. I gotta go back into my shark books and find out what that cutoff was, at least back when I was reading those books back in the day. So interesting story. Don't swim yourself out into that deep water. That's just no good. I'll have that link. I'll put it in the description for the attack we just covered before that with David Bornman, and I hope you check that out. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'll be back in a couple more days with another show of attacks, but until then, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.